Hi, my name is Drew Thomason. I'm a consulting manager at KEB. I'm here today in my role as a facilitator of the state's workforce system, and more specifically, I'm here as a facilitator of Illinois' workforce state plan. I have several years' experience covering city and county governments before I moved on to cover the State House as a reporter here in Springfield. After that, I moved on to the nonprofit sector where I spent 10 years doing communications, outreach, and strategic planning. So real quick, I'm going to go over to the 4 areas that we're going to cover today. So first, we're going to review what the WIOA State Plan does, just so we're all kind of working from a common definition. Then we're going to go over the recent WIOA State Plan Modification that has happened this year. We'll then move on to review the dialogue around the workforce system that's going to inform the 2024-2028 State Plan. And then we'll end by talking about stakeholder engagement around the development of that state plan. So real quick, let's talk about what a WIOA state plan is. The WIOA Unified State Plan is, first of all, a federal compliance document for the United States Departments of Labor and Education that is required under the federal 2014 WIOA law. Also more than that. Illinois' WIOA Unified State Plan outlines the governor's vision for an integrated workforce, education and economic development policies, and other programs for the state of Illinois. So while it does serve a purpose and has specific requirements as a federal compliance document, it is also the roadmap by which the state workforce development system navigates 4 years. So real quick, let's talk about the most recent state plan modification. So that state plan, as I said, is a 4-year plan. The federal government also requires at the midpoint, so at the 2-year mark of that state plan, that states update it and modify it with the most recent labor market information, other workforce developments, and other economic situations that could impact it. So as I mentioned earlier, we are working on the 2020 to 2024 state plan. That plan was developed and submitted right before the pandemic impacted everyone's lives and all of the economic downturn and turmoil that caused. So this modification maybe was a little bit more in-depth and detailed than past modifications would have been, because not only did it update the traditional areas of the plan, it also had to go in and account for, again, the economic turmoil of the and changes of the past 2 years. So I said, in the modification, there are accounts of the impacts of COVID on the labor market and the job market. So just detailing the number of people that have been unemployed because of COVID, jobs lost because of that, and also jobs created because of COVID, changes in industries, things like that. Then there are also adjustments made taking into account the pandemic and other social, economic issues that have come up over the past years that needed to be taken into account so we could ensure that the vision and goals originally stated in the 2020 plan could still be achieved. It was felt that the vision and goals set out in 2020, despite everything that has gone on, were still relevant and were still worthwhile in pursuing. And so there were adjustments made throughout the plan to ensure the success of that original vision and goals. So there are other things also incorporated into the modification. The first being ensuring an equitable and accessible workforce system. So as I'm sure you know, the Governor's Commission on Workforce Equity and Access and the IWIB's Equity Task Force have been doing work, and they've been expanding and enriching dialogue around the core principles of WIOA to ensure that it's a workforce system that works for everyone. And while both the Commission and the Task Force recommendations are still being finalized and the modification has already been submitted, the modification did make sure to mention the work that both the Commission and the Task Force are doing, as well as incorporating as much from those groups, those two organizations as we could before submitting. In that modification, it also ensures that the desire, ensures to include the desire to take the work that the Commission and the Task Force are doing and use it to inform the creation of the next state plan. And we'll get into kind of the dialogue being generated by the Commission and the Task Force a little bit later on in the presentation. Two other areas that I'm going to kind of lump together because they're so intertwined are the increased investment of state dollars in the workforce system and the larger use of supportive and barrier reduction services. So how are those related? Why did I combine them? Well, I'll give you an example. Illinois is aligning the implementation of its new Climate and Equitable Jobs Act with the broader workforce system. This includes expanding the list of training providers eligible to receive WIOA funds to include occupations that support the state's move to clean energy and the production of electric vehicles. So that's the increased investment of state dollars. But the act also includes the establishment of the Energy Transition Barrier Reduction Program. It will provide supportive and financial assistance services to individuals participating in the Clean Jobs Workforce Network program and the Climate Works pre-apprenticeship program to overcome barriers to engaging and completing those workforce programs. So that's where the supportive and barrier reduction services comes in. Another example is Illinois is restarting the JTED program after that was eliminated by state funding cuts. So the program is being retooled to align with existing WIOA funding, so combining state and federal funding to support streamlining the workforce system to better reach underserved populations. It also recognized to better serve and reach those underserved populations that there needs to be an expansion of supportive and barrier reduction services. So the new JTED program, the revamped program, includes a flexible funding pool that will be used to help increase individual stability and job retention. And it does so by covering costs such as housing-related expenses, that could include utilities, transportation, childcare, digital technology needs, education needs, mental health services, substance abuse services, income support, work-related supplies that aren't usually covered by program services. So recognizing that to ensure the success of people, we have to have these other services that have traditionally been outside or a smaller part of the workforce system. And then lastly, a theme in the state plan modification is ensuring the system is adaptable to whatever may come its way. So two examples of that would be the new Illinois Employment Business System. It's a data system that includes new labor market data streams to ensure that we're as up to date as possible on trends, both near-term trends and just over the horizon trends. There's also, within this modification, a renewed commitment to service integration and alignment, because there's a firm held belief that ensuring service integration and alignment across all the programs within the workforce system will create a more resilient workforce system. And as the group was creating this modification, this modified state plan, it was all done with these themes in mind and with the hope that the work around these themes can be used to inform the discussion and the creation of the 2024-2028 plan. Here, so that's the themes and general ideas that were incorporated into the modification of the state plan. Now, let's move on to talking about some of the ongoing dialogue that is currently happening around the workforce system that will be used to inform the next state plan. So as I mentioned, there's the work that the Governor's Commission on Workforce Equity and Access is doing. Just so we're all on the same page there. In September of 2021, Governor Pritzker created the commission. And the idea is that the commission will offer recommendations on how to ensure that the workforce system is equitable, accessible, and effective for everyone in Illinois. The work of the commission is really grounded in an understanding of user and stakeholder experience. And it's focused on how racial, social, geographic, and other demographic areas can really inform the experience and outcomes of individuals in the workforce system. The Commission is finishing its work between now and June with a draft report and recommendations coming out in May, and then a final report will be sent out in June. And while that work is ongoing, there have been some themes that have emerged from the work that has happened to date. And so those themes are ensuring that the workforce system is visible, it is welcoming, it is coordinated, and it is human-centered. So I'd like to kind of combine visible and welcoming. So what do those two mean, and what's the conversation happening there? Through a process of engaging job seekers and employers, it's become pretty clear that there is a gap between the work that the workforce system does and the services that it offers, and an awareness with the general public around those services. The Commission is set to make recommendations around how to raise awareness of the system and what it offers to both job seekers and businesses. That's also a discussion that's happening elsewhere in the workforce system. It's a thing that many parties are uniting around, and that's raising the visibility, the knowledge of the workforce system in the state. The other thought is once people know about the services that the workforce system can offer them, the Commission wants to ensure that the workforce system is welcoming, that it doesn't feel punitive that you're there or demeaning that you're seeking out these services, but that it is welcoming and it is a process that is going to set you on a path, if you're a job seeker, towards a career, and if you're an employer, to building your business. So another theme of the Commission is a coordinated workforce system. So coordination of the various programs in the system. So for example, trying to ensure that users don't have to submit the same information to different programs. From a user standpoint, it can feel like maybe the different parts of the workforce system are in completely different worlds. So ensuring that no matter which program you're interacting with, that it feels like a united and coordinated system. The Commission wants to ensure the same experience and quality across all programs. Lastly, human-centered is a thing that's really got brought up and kind of in coordination with coordinated. It can be too easy for individuals to be caught up in the bureaucracy of these programs and to feel like maybe a cog instead of a person. So that's why the work of the Commission has really been grounded in the user experience, so they can make recommendations that the experience of people in the workforce system is one that, again, is welcoming and that makes the individual interacting with the system feel valued and supported. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there's the work that the IWIB Equity Task Force is doing. So the task force was established in 2020, and it is charged with reviewing data, policies, programs across the workforce development system, and it wants to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to engage regardless of the funding source, the geography, participant identification, or the workforce system, service needed. The task force is wrapping up its initial charge, but as we'll talk about in a minute, it is recommending that the IWIB have a standing equity committee. So, as I mentioned earlier, the task force's work isn't quite done. They're set to release the initial findings and recommendations later this summer. But so far, there have been 6 areas that it is focusing on. And I will say that these are all preliminary, and the exact details could change between now and when the final recommendations and document is released. But I think it's important to include this work because of the impact it will have around the content of the next state plan and how it will inform that next state plan. So here you have those 6 areas. Now so real quick, those 6 areas are: build a culture of equity in the workforce system, integrate an equity lens into the work of the Illinois Workforce Innovation Board, invest in data capacity, tracking, and ability to identify disparities, diversify the workforce leadership and staff, and provide training around equity and cultural competency, provide funding to and partner with organizations that have a track record of cultural competence, and prioritize workforce services that include supportive services. So if you'll notice, as we're moving through this presentation, there are going to be things that repeat, or if they don't repeat, at least rhyme with each other, and they're going to continue to come up throughout this presentation and throughout the discussion around what a reimagined workforce system could be like in the state of Illinois. So let's take these one at a time. So the first one is building a culture of equity in the workforce system. The task force recognizes that you can't train your way out of an inequitable system. There's a need for a cultural shift in the state. So they want to provide technical assistance for local and regional areas around recognize promising equity work where it's happening. So equity work is raised up and highlighted and celebrated in the state to help move the culture in that direction. Secondly, the task force is recommending that there be an integration of an equity lens into the work of the state board. This ensures that equity is a key consideration in the development of any new policies or programs, budgets, and then equity becomes operationalized in the programs. It also means an ongoing process for analyzing or diagnosing the impact of the design and implementation of these policies on underserved and marginalized individuals and groups, and it helps identify and eliminate barriers to success. Third, invest in data capacity, track disaggregated outcomes, and identify disparities and the contributing factors to disparities. So kind of some ideas around this are to improve the state's ability to analyze disaggregated data. That ensures programs are being provided and accessed equitably. Got to make sure that the data is readily available to everyone. And as that data is able to be disaggregated and is as real time as possible, that will help identify areas for improvement. Fourth, diversify workforce leadership and staff and provide system-wide training on equity, cultural competence, cultural awareness, and sensitivity for those served by the workforce system. So some recommendations here would be to encourage state agencies and the state board and local boards and service providers to make a really concerted effort to recruit, retain, and advance staff that reflect the communities that they are serving, and that it's including people of color. Also, provide training on key equity concepts, skills, and promising practices that have been identified. Fifth, provide funding to and partner organizations with a track record of cultural competence and success in serving targeted populations. So here, a recommendation would be to help culturally responsive community-based organizations qualify for the eligible training provider list. And then lastly, prioritize workforce services that include supportive services. Urge state agencies to fund design funding competitions to include supportive services, including follow-up and post-employment support. Also, build on current successes by encouraging more local areas to adopt a human-centered approach to designing services. So there are also some other things that were raised during the modification of the state plan and other discussions that are going on that will be used to inform the next state plan. So one of those is supporting and utilizing returning citizens in the labor market, supporting entrepreneurship, ensuring a nimble and responsive workforce system. And our question to you and for you to share with others is, are there themes or topics that are being discussed around the workforce system that maybe we didn't cover today that should be considered, that need to be considered? And we'll get into kind of the stakeholder engagement side of things where you can help us with that here in a little bit. So next, let's discuss how the stakeholder feedback is going to inform the development of this next state plan. So before we get too far into the stakeholder engagement, again, I want to ensure that we're all working from the same knowledge base. So I thought it'd be helpful if we kind of covered the framework used to understand roles and to help illustrate the natural process for workforce initiatives. So at the very center there, you'll see you start with the vision, and the vision is created by the governor and the state agencies and the advocates and the employers who come together and really envision a workforce system that works for everyone. Once we have the vision, the direction, then on the left you'll see there's the policy side. We use policy, develop policy that can deliver on the vision. And then on the right side you will see operations, the orange. So we take this policy, we develop a strategy and professional development that will help operationalize it. The operations is where the rubber hits the road. It is where we take the policy and the strategy and turn them into programs for people. And then kind of something that supports everything is professional development to ensure training and resources are available to carry out the policy and the operations and the vision. So when you expand out a little bit, this is kind of what the organization of WIOA activities and integration looks like. Again, the blue represents the policy side of the equation, which includes the state board, its committees, task force, and other groups. It also includes the governor's office and the state agencies and others in leadership. And then on the right, you have in orange the operations side of the workforce system. It's where the programs offered through the workforce system are carried out. So like frontline workers. The next 2 years, stakeholders will be engaged first around that policy side of the workforce system. That's going to include discussing ideas and concepts from the Governor's Commission, as well as from the Equity Task Force and from other groups, such as the IWIB has an evaluation work group that is doing some work right now. There's a WIOA Interagency Technical Assistance Team that has some ideas that will inform the next state plan. There will also be direct communication with advocates, job seekers, and employers around policies that they feel would lead to a workforce system that works for everyone. So here in this initial bit of stakeholder engagement and development of the state plan, that stakeholder input is going to be used to inform the vision, to guide the entire system, as well as the concepts that will anchor the strategies used in the next state plan. So once that blue side, the policy side, is agreed upon with the draft vision, goals, and strategy, the work moves to the orange side, or the operational side of that chart. And it's turned into programs. So here stakeholders are going to be engaged around what those programs look like and what the specifics of those programs will be. So we'll make sure to engage frontline workers, state agency staff, and again, advocates, job seekers, and employers. And here that stakeholder engagement will help inform those operational elements, and it'll also help inform the way that programs are evaluated and that the outcomes of the state plan strategies and activities are evaluated. So real quick before we move on to a few of the other details around stakeholder engagement, I just want to run through the kind of proposed process for creating the next state plan. So we will start with the initial stakeholder engagement and kind of information gathering, and that's happening right now. And it will run through the summer and into the fall a little bit. That engagement and information gathering will be used to help develop the vision, goals, and strategies I mentioned earlier. That will happen in the winter of this year and into 2023 a little bit. After the vision, goals, and strategies are developed, then we will start to craft the state plan, start to develop that content, and throughout the development of that content, there's going to be ongoing dialogue between the state agencies and groups that are developing that content and stakeholders to ensure that the development of that content is meeting the realities and expectations of those on the ground who participate in the system. Hope to have a final draft of the next state plan by December of 2023. Once that final draft is completed, open up for public comment and feedback on that plan, incorporate that public feedback into the final state plan, and then March of 2024, so a little bit less than 2 years from today, submit that next state plan to the federal government. So that's kind of an idea of the stakeholder input, how it will be used in stakeholder engagement. But what does stakeholder engagement actually look like? Well, um, we're still in the early processes of developing a stakeholder engagement plan and developing the tools that will be used for that. But in the past, things like WIOA webinars, online surveys, focus groups, FAQs, have all been used to varying degrees with various groups for stakeholder engagement. Our question to you, and for you to put to others within your network, is, are there any ways of engaging stakeholders around the workforce system that have been missed in the past that we need to take into consideration as we develop this new state plan? I just want to thank you for your time today. If you have any questions or if you have any comments on anything that I discussed today, that's my contact information. Please reach out to me. I would love to start a conversation and have an ongoing dialogue with you as we move through the development of the next state plan.